Yo, we want to welcome you guys back to the NFL podcast here with AWN. Just want to reintroduce ourselves. I mean, it's our 10th episode, and so let's just start this over again. So my name's Riccardo. My nickname is the Coach because that's what I do. I've been coaching youth sports all the way to a couple years coaching in FBS football, and now I'm back on the side coaching at a high school. And then on your screen here, you see Sam Acho. I nicknamed Sam Acho the mayor because I think he gets everybody's vote, primarily because of his high character. And let's just be honest, the dude's got a smile that'll brighten your heart, all right? All right, we got Zach Miller here, who's the truth. I've known Zach for a long time. And not only is he the truth in giving the information you need from a financial planning standpoint, but the dude was the truth on the field, as were the other guys, but this dude was the truth from day one. And lastly, you guys have been able to experience a professor, and you should know why he gets that name, because the knowledge that he spits is definitely academic. So that's who we are. We're all financial planners at AWM, and our goal, honestly, is to be able to come alongside people and help them create, sustain generational wealth and have healthy, flourishing families. So, like I said, this is our 10th episode. Today, we're going to talk about the 4 uses of money. Now, the 3 previous episodes were us talking about taxes, which is the most, not important, but one of the uses of money. And then the next 3 are spending, sharing or giving, and then also saving. And then today we're going to focus primarily on the spending. And so let's start there. I'm going to start first with you. I got some questions. First, let's start with Zach. Going into your first contract to your second contract, how did your spending change?
I spent more money. So lucky enough to sign a 5-year deal in Seattle. And with that came big signing bonus, big roster bonuses, truly guaranteed money where it's guaranteed for skill, cap, and injury. Very rare in the NFL. So for me, it was like having that financial security where I knew that, money was coming in. So I had to buy a new house when I went from Oakland to Seattle. So upgraded my house, got a nicer house. My twin girls were also born that same year I got that contract. So with kids comes spending more money, but also being able to buy time, like having help, having a nanny for those kids when I was in season and I couldn't help out as much. That's where a lot of the spending went into the kids, into, better cars, bigger cars. Had to get the ESV Escalade because of the car seats and all that, and all the strollers you got to have for that. So a lot of that was part of it, but really just like that feeling that like, hey, I'm finally getting compensated, what I deserve. And so you feel like, hey, I deserve this. I'm going to spend a little bit more money on stuff I care about.
Okay. The professor, I mean, my assumption just knowing you is I don't think you were just blowing your money. I don't think it was Gator boots, pimped out Gucci suits. So when it comes to your first expensive purchase, not a house or a car, what did you buy?
You're pretty spot on, Rick. And you're pretty spot on. I think I waited until after my second season to actually buy something expensive that wasn't a car. But I bought myself a nice watch and a nice set of golf clubs. So just really stereotyping myself right there with the watch and the golf clubs, but it's really where I went with it. I still have the watch to this day. I literally just cleaned it the other day, put new watch straps on it, so it looks brand new. But that's very, very much up my alley rather than buying a new watch.
Yeah, I kind of figured that. That's good. All right, Mayor, I want you to go back for me. If you could have changed one thing in terms of your spending in your 9-year career, okay? If you could change one thing in the way in which you spend, what would you change and why?
That's such a great question. I wouldn't necessarily change this, but I would ask my younger self for more awareness. It was actually on my wedding. So my wife and I just celebrated 10 years. And like anyone who knows me knows I love to throw parties. I love to like celebrate with people. In Chicago, I did this liquor store teardown party when we bought this liquor store and turned it into a food mart, right? I love parties. And so for our wedding, we wanted to have this big, not we. My wife was like, hey man, we got to save this money. We have a long marriage. I was like, no, let's throw this big party and have like food and people and American food and Nigerian food and this huge venue with this hall and all this and all that. And it was awesome and fun and great and memorable. People still talk about it to this day. But I'm not going to lie to you. We came back from that honeymoon and we were looking at the account like, what did I do? And what I mean by that is, yes, I had my investments that I didn't want to touch. I had money saved up on the investment side. But on my personal spending account, it was very much so this thought of, oh, wow, I spent this money but I hadn't actually had a plan of saving of what happens next. There's a guy I was talking with who's a college guy who had some NIL money. And he was like, man, I got this big NIL money and I spent it, but I didn't realize, oh, wow, I have to pay taxes on that. And that was a little bit of my experience in the NFL. It wasn't NIL or the tax piece, just this idea of, man, got this big contract and it's a great wedding. I have this money I want to spend, but I didn't plan well enough to say, oh, wow, there's actually an entire year and career and life after I spent all this money.
Yeah, some might say that I was pretty wise because I married somebody whose dad assumed the wedding. But I'm telling you about our 10th anniversary, which was a while ago now. We'll be 17 this summer. But my father-in-law goes, man, I'm so sorry I forgot your anniversary. I don't know how. I don't expect him to remember it. He goes, I don't know how I forgot it. It was the most expensive day of my life. So, all right. So my biggest expense, quite honestly, is my kids right now, and it's youth sports. That's like if your kids are playing in any competitive youth sports, but they try to make it all competitive now. I was talking to my wife last night. I said, how much do you think we spend? Okay, when our son was doing the Olympic development soccer training he was doing as well, it was about $25,000 a year, which is insane. I think my mom paid like $100 for the whole year to do the Boys and Girls Club, and we just played all the sports. And so it's a different world.
Can I ask a quick question, Riccardo?
No.
No questions allowed.
No,
so Zach said something earlier about money. And Zach, I don't remember exactly how you said it, but something to the effect of you use money to buy time. And I don't know if Riccardo, I don't know if he can expand on it, but I'd love that. But that's an interesting way to think about money. Zach, can you expand on that?
One of the greatest things is once you've made enough money, you realize like you have enough money that like you're not going to run out. So now you're like, hey, I don't want to do a bunch of these things. Like whether that's like stuff around the house, yard work, you can literally buy time back to do things you actually want to do. And that's one of the greatest trades you can ever make. As you get older, it's easy to have more perspective on that. But the older I get, the more I think like, hey, I want to spend time with my family. I want to go on vacations with my family. I want to do things I want to do. I want to coach my kids. I want to do those things. So let me buy some time back, have someone else do certain things that I just don't want to do. Or even if I want to do them, like I have to really like it to want to do it and spend that time doing it because there's only so much time in a day. There's only so much time you get to be with your young kids. So that's one of the biggest trades I love to make.
That's good. I mean, one of the things we hear a lot, right? So we have been meeting with a lot of our clients, all of us, in terms of NFL season's over. We're having the postseason meetings. And one of the things that comes up a lot, and it's usually a misquote from the Bible, and that is the misquoted verse is that money is the root of all evil. When really, it's the love of money. And what we say is money in itself, it's just a tool to pay for the things and bless the people you love. And this tool begins to grow or help like your desires. And so spending is a part of that. And so I'm going to start where I usually start, and that is with the professor. When we step back in terms of what we do as a multifamily office, we want our clients to achieve, sustain, we say, multi-generational wealth. And there's a plan for that. And so, Jeff, I'm going to ask you in terms of like when it comes to the plan, we usually say 40% of your gross income is going to go to taxes, right? We say another 40% we want you to save, which we'll talk about in a couple of episodes. And then 20% becomes your spending. And with that spending is your giving and your sharing. Can you explain like all of what that spending includes, Jeff?
Yeah, so spending includes the things you would think about, just housing costs, your bills, paying your credit cards off. It also might include agent fees, really anything that's in a way coming out of your pocket that you're not getting back. Remember, Zach touched on it in a couple episodes back, like when you're actually spending on like Normatec boots or getting extra training, we actually consider that part of your investment spend. That's like part of your 40% investments. But there's 20% of stuff going out the door that really you're not seeing again, kind of leaving your accounts. And one of the reasons we, like you said, we try to keep it at that 20% because that 40% savings number is the one that's really crucial to set your future self up for success, is getting that 40% for you and your family down the road to achieve those priorities you have later in life.
It's important. So Zach, what are some good examples that you've seen from just even uniquely our clients when it comes to spending and spending wisely?
Well, one of the biggest thing that I didn't know when I was a player was I didn't know how much I spent. So like I was lucky that I was saving a lot, but I had no idea. And with how you're able to track things now, just having that knowledge of how much you're spending to be even able to know that you hit a 40% target is so valuable as a player, because there's a lot of times you're just in the season, you don't know how much you're spending. So when it comes to like spending wisely, one of the biggest things, and I learned this early in the NFL, was to, like Jeff said, invest in your body, because the longer you play, the longer and the better you play, the longer you play, the better you play, the more money you make, the more money you can spend. And that's true of every NFL player. So, well, that's mental performance, hyperbaric chamber. One of the older guys in the tight end room had a hyperbaric chamber he brought to training camp, sat in that thing. And I mean, he got to play extra years just because he focused so much on his body. So I learned a lot from that. And then there's other things that are like, guys, if you're not going to be on a long-term contract, like buying a house is not a great idea. I mean, it is if you're on a long-term contract with contract security, guarantees, things like that, then maybe you expect to be in the house for 4 years. But buying, selling houses, all those transaction costs, that's usually not a good spending wisely decision. Same thing if you're buying a car that's a few $100,000. You don't even know if you're going to make the roster, the 53-man. Like, that's just not spending wisely. So it depends on who you are as a player. Like there's kind of smart choices, and then there's not smart choices. And the earlier you learn that, the better in the NFL.
Jeff, we hear, and I don't even really like talking about it because it's like what everybody talks about. Athletes go broke. Athletes go broke. Athletes lost their money. When obviously we work with, over 190 families who are doing just well. But when it does happen, when people do go sideways, what are some of the ways in which, or reasons of which they go sideways that most NFL players, families, friends, people just have no idea?
I think Zach did a good job touching on the big ones people hear about, right? Which is kind of overspending on the big ticket items. That's the stories you might see in the headlines. But what actually typically happens is this thing called lifestyle creep or lifestyle inflation, which is just behind the scenes without you even realizing it's happening. You slowly start spending more. You slowly start getting used to a nicer and nicer lifestyle. And the one thing that almost never happens, but people think they can do it, is they can drop back to a lower lifestyle when they're done playing and the checks stop. So that's actually the danger, is just like this behavioral component going on behind the scenes that you don't realize is happening because it's just slow and progressive over time.
I mean, that is just real. And that's just not unique to NFL players. I mean, I just share a story personally. So I was a pastor, right? And so not making very much money at all, but I was the only income in our family. My wife went back to law school. Her first day of law school was our oldest son, first day of kindergarten. After 3 years, she graduates. She gets this baller job. And all of a sudden, she's like doubled my income. And we got money, okay? After about a year, this is the most money we've ever had. We look up and we go, we had some great experiences. We ate at some dope restaurants. We drank some amazing wine. We went to Europe. Like, we had a lot of experiences. But in terms of our savings, like, nothing had changed. And before we knew it, it's like we were so used to living off of this very humble living. And then we got more money and we just spent more money. And without even knowing it, going, okay, we're going to have to readjust some things. And so it's not just something that's unique to NFL players, but you hear people from the outside go, how did this person blow all this money? And it's like, it's a way different experience. And I know Zach and I were just in a couple of meetings in LA, meeting with players. And I mean, you're right. Like, sometimes they're like, I had no idea I spent that much money. And so, I mean, I'm glad that you hit on that. And so,
if I could,
go for
quick.
it.
Just that point you talked about, Riccardo, as this book I think we've all read, or I'm reading it now, called The Psychology of Money, or even Jeff talked about the behavioral aspect of money. Even if you get more money, it doesn't mean you'll have more money at the end if you're spending more money. And so I've heard someone say, when I got in the NFL, before my rookie year, there's a vet who essentially, people were like, man, Sam, you're awesome. You're great. Don't let the NFL change you. Don't let the money change you. Don't let it change you. And I'm like, I don't know if it's going to change me. How do I know? I've never had this kind of money before. I never had this kind of contract before. How do I know? And this friend of mine, his name is Rudy Neiswanger, and he said, money's just a magnifier. Like, all that fame and money and success, all that those things are is a magnifier. It'll magnify, let's say you were a giver, you'll give more. Let's say you were a big time spender, you'll spend more. Let's say there was some stuff you're doing on the side you don't want anybody to know about. Well, that'll just magnify with more money. And so that's what I think that's why we're here. We want to help people change the way you think about money, specifically athletes. We want athletes to change the way they view money, change the way they view wealth, change the way that we view money and we view wealth, because we believe you can change the behavior and change the psychology, all of a sudden you'll be able to change outcomes. So that's the reason why we exist at AWM, is to change the way that you view money, wealth, and impact.
That's legit. Zach, you've done a great job. I mean, you're always telling me how rich you are and everything. So, but you've done a great job. You did a great job. You saved well. And so what did you do personally? What did you do to put yourself in the position that you're in now?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing was just not spending a ton of money. I mean, I didn't grow up with much, so like I didn't let that lifestyle that can get me. So I didn't fly private. I wasn't flying first class. Like once I got to the second contract, yeah, I bought a few first class flights, put my infant twins in there, really wrecked a lot of people's experiences. But it was great for my wife and me to fly first class when we had to with our little ones. But I mean, the biggest thing was like just not being wasteful with the money or not spending on the things that weren't really important. And then just, understanding that like depreciating assets don't build wealth, like knowing the things that aren't going to contribute to growing, kind of that lifetime spending that I wanted to have, and thinking about my future self was the biggest thing, because I knew if I hit enough in my account that I would never have to work again for money. I could work, not work if I didn't want to, or work for something I really cared about and wanted to do rather than something I had to do. And so I knew that throughout my whole NFL career that there is a number you can hit where you do get that security.
Yeah. Well, in conclusion, I think it's really helpful for all of us and everybody listening. You got to find out what is enough, and where do you find like true joy? And the TV show Mad Men, Don Draper says, happiness is that experience you have just when you realize you want more happiness. And it never becomes enough unless you actually set your priorities. Jeff said it a few episodes ago that one of the hardest things to do with clients is get people to think through what are the priorities, like what do you want for your life, and then align your investing, your goals, everything you have according to that, because then you get to set what is enough. And I think that's one of the more difficult things, is knowing your priorities and knowing what is enough. We said it before and we'll say it always. Money is just a tool. Spending is a part of that, to be able to meet and align everything to your priorities. On the next episode, we're going to talk about what does it look like for us to share, and what does it look like to give. We believe it unlocks the grips of greed, and we're going to talk more about that in the next episode. If you have any questions on the things we've talked about today, please shoot us a text or give us a call at 602-989-5022. Again, that's 602-989-5022.
The information in this podcast is educational and general in nature and does not take into consideration the listener's personal circumstances. Therefore, it is not intended to be a substitute for specific, individualized financial, legal, or tax advice. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a final decision.